The galaxy was a place of ancient power and wisdom, home to empires that stretched across countless star systems. These mighty races had long mastered the art of space travel, their civilizations as old as the stars themselves. Each one had their own way of navigating the cosmos, building empires that seemed untouchable to anyone outside their ranks. Humanity, a species born from the blue planet known as Earth, had only recently stepped into the vast, complex world of the galaxy. The moment they made contact with the first interstellar beings, the galaxy's great powers barely acknowledged them. To the advanced species, humans were little more than an afterthought, primitive, naive, and hopelessly behind in every way. Their technology was basic compared to the machines of the galaxy's oldest races, and their attempts to join the Galactic Council were seen as laughable. In the grand halls of the Council, whispers echoed with mockery. "How quaint," some would say, shaking their heads at the humans' well-meaning yet futile efforts. The species that had conquered whole star systems saw Earth as nothing more than a curiosity, a species too young and too weak to ever pose any real threat. Yet, there was something different about Earth. Beneath the surface, hidden away from the prying eyes of the galaxy, a small group of humans had begun to see things differently. They were not like the rest, consumed by the desire to prove their worth through strength alone. Instead, they had chosen a path of patience. Led by an enigmatic general, known only to a few and a handful of brilliant scientists, these humans had a plan far more dangerous than anything the galaxy could imagine. While the rest of humanity played the part of the innocent, eager learners, hoping to gain favor from the galactic elites, this group was quietly preparing. Their efforts were masked behind a facade of weakness. They adopted the role of the humble newcomers, constantly asking questions, absorbing knowledge from every corner of the galaxy. In every meeting, they played the part of the student, asking to learn the ancient techniques of starfaring races, making promises they would never keep. The galaxy laughed at their attempts to fit in, believing that humanity's ambition would be its downfall. Little did they know, this false humility was nothing but a veil, hiding something far more deadly. The general and his inner circle were building something that could change the entire balance of power. Hidden away in a secret shipyard, far from prying eyes, humanity was constructing a fleet of ships unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. These ships weren't made from the same materials the galaxy's empires used, nor were they powered by the same ancient methods. Instead, humanity had developed something new, something that could harness the raw power of dying stars. The Supernova fleet, as it was called, was humanity's true trump card, and it was a force that would make the galaxy tremble. Each ship was a masterpiece of design, crafted from a blend of scavenged alien technology and brilliant human innovation. They were fast, stealthy, and powered by energy sources that defied the very laws of physics. It was an unprecedented fusion of science and military might, and no one could have predicted its devastating potential. As humanity's fleet quietly took shape, the galaxy continued to mock and dismiss them. They did not see the growing threat because they had no idea what was coming. The mocking laughter that echoed through the halls of the Galactic Council would soon fade. What the galaxy had underestimated was the resilience of humanity. No longer would they be the weak, unworthy species begging for a seat at the table. No longer would they be dismissed as naive dreamers. The humans, silently preparing in the shadows, were about to show the galaxy the true cost of their arrogance. As the last ship of the Supernova fleet completed its construction, humanity's time to strike was fast approaching. The galaxy's laughter would turn to fear, and it would be humanity that would have the last word. The Supernova fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity, once dismissed as an insignificant species, had quietly crafted a fleet that could challenge the power of entire star systems. These ships, named after the most powerful event in the universe, the death of a star, were built in total secrecy, hidden in remote corners of space. The very core of each ship harnessed the energy of a dying star, a force capable of destroying entire planets. They were sleek, elegant in design, but deadly. While other empires relied on traditional methods of warfare, the humans had something far more dangerous up their sleeves: ships powered by technology that was both alien and revolutionary. They had taken fragments of lost civilizations' knowledge, combining them with their own innovations. The result was a fleet that seemed almost magical in its power, a fleet capable of bending the very laws of physics. Every ship was equipped with systems that could warp space itself, creating gravitational anomalies that could shatter enemy fleets before they ever had a chance to retaliate. No one, not even humanity's closest allies, knew the full scope of what had been created. For years, humanity had played the role of the humble student. They had acted as if they were still learning from the more advanced races, quietly observing, asking questions, and pretending to be harmless. But all along, in hidden shipyards far beyond the reach of the galaxy's prying eyes, the fleet was being built. Each ship was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of what humanity could achieve. When pushed to the brink, these were not just vessels of war. They were a testament to human resilience, to the drive to prove that no one, no matter how much more advanced they were, could push humanity aside without consequences. The first sign of humanity's newfound power came when a small alien outpost, located on the very edge of human space, was suddenly destroyed. There was no warning, no distress signal, no survivors. The outpost, a research station that had once been bustling with alien activity, was gone, obliterated in an instant. The destruction was so complete that nothing remained of the station except a faint, glowing cloud of debris. The galaxy's major empires took notice, of course, but most dismissed it as an isolated incident. Some whispered that it could have been a rogue human faction acting out of frustration. Others speculated that the humans were just experimenting with some new weapon they couldn't fully control. But none of them realized that this was no accident. It wasn't a failed experiment or a random act of violence. It was the first calculated move in a much larger plan. A plan that would change everything. As whispers spread throughout the galaxy, some races began to suspect that the humans were hiding something far more dangerous than they had let on. Yet, most continued to underestimate them, still viewing the humans as a species of naive dreamers, trying to play in a game that was far beyond their reach. But they were wrong. What the galaxy didn't know was that this was only the beginning. The Supernova fleet had been unleashed, and the galaxy was about to feel the full force of humanity's hidden might. The galaxy's empires had been laughing at humanity for too long, convinced that their own advanced technologies made them untouchable. They believed they had seen all the tricks the humans had to offer, but they had no idea what was coming. The stage had been set, and soon the galaxy would realize that they had underestimated Earth's true potential. No longer would humanity stand on the sidelines, begging for a seat at the table. They had created a fleet that could rewrite the rules of warfare, and they were ready to use it. The fleet's existence would remain a secret for a little longer, but the first strike was already complete. And in the darkness of space, far from the watchful eyes of the galaxy's greatest empires, humanity was preparing for what would come next. The galaxy's laughter would soon turn to fear, and once that moment arrived, nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy had never faced a threat quite like the one humanity had now become. For years, the great empires had laughed at the idea of humanity ever being more than a passing curiosity. But with every strike from the Supernova fleet, the galaxy's most powerful factions began to realize that the humans were no longer a joke. Small, precise attacks on remote outposts and military installations had now turned into something far more serious. One by one, humanity's ships obliterated key positions across the galaxy, leaving nothing but chaos in their wake. The galaxy's most influential species, those who once thought of humans as weak and naive, now found themselves cornered. They had underestimated humanity for so long that they now faced a threat that could unravel the very fabric of their carefully built empires. It was too late to deny the power of the Supernova fleet. The quiet, seemingly insignificant species had turned into a force that could not be ignored. In an emergency summit called by the galaxy's oldest and most powerful races, leaders gathered in a tense, dimly lit room. Holograms flickered around the table, projecting the worried faces of species from every corner of the galaxy. The atmosphere was thick with uncertainty. The once certain superiority of the galaxy's elites was now shaken. "We've waited too long," one of the leaders, a towering alien with skin like burnished silver, said. "We must act now before they destroy everything we've worked for." His voice was tight with anger, but also fear. Other voices rose in agreement, calling for swift and forceful retaliation. "We cannot let them destabilize the entire galactic order," another leader added. "If we do not crush them now, we risk everything." But not everyone agreed. There were those who still believed in diplomacy, those who wanted to reach out to the humans, to understand what had driven them to this point. "There must be another way," a softer voice spoke, one of the few human ambassadors present at the summit. "We can offer them a seat at the table, show them that we don't see them as a threat." But the more powerful factions, those whose very survival depended on their control of the galaxy, were already on edge. To them, humanity's sudden rise was a challenge to everything they had known. The idea that one species, one so young, so new to the galactic stage, could threaten their power was a bitter pill to swallow. As the summit wore on, the leaders of the galaxy's greatest empires began to turn on one another, unable to decide how to handle the human threat. The discussions grew heated, arguments swirling over strategy, over what kind of force should be used. But amid the chaos, one thing became clear: the galaxy could no longer ignore humanity. And if they didn't act soon, they might lose everything they had spent centuries building. In the midst of this turmoil, General Kalen, the leader of humanity's Supernova fleet, made a broadcast to the entire galaxy. The message was clear, and it carried the weight of authority. His face, strong and calm, appeared on every screen, his voice steady, but filled with an undeniable intensity. "You laughed at us," he began. "You mocked us, called us weak, called us foolish. But now you will see what happens when you push humanity too far. We don't seek war, but we demand equality. We want respect, not because of our weapons, but because of what we stand for. We will not be treated like lesser beings. We are not asking for your approval. We are demanding recognition. If you refuse us, then we will take it by force." His words echoed across the galaxy, cutting through the noise of debate and uncertainty. The message was a declaration, a statement of intent that left no room for doubt. Humanity had been pushed too far, and now they were ready to fight for their place in the galaxy. The galaxy's leaders were left with no choice. They could either meet humanity's demands and risk losing their grip on power, or they could escalate the conflict, risking the destruction of their entire empire. Either way, the era of humanity's mockery had come to an end. The time for diplomacy was over, and the war was about to begin. The galaxy, once so sure of its superiority, now had to face the reality of what it had created. The galaxy had never seen a war like the one humanity had now begun. With the full force of the Supernova fleet at their disposal, humanity unleashed a campaign that was swift, calculated, and brutal in its efficiency. Unlike the grand space battles that defined galactic conflicts, humanity's tactics were different, precise, targeted, and devastating. The Supernova fleet moved like shadows, striking at the heart of enemy infrastructure without warning. Supply lines were severed, military bases reduced to rubble, and communications networks shattered in an instant. Entire fleets, once considered invincible, were obliterated before they could even assemble a proper defense. What had once been mighty empires, proud in their technological superiority, were now left reeling, disoriented, and vulnerable. The galaxy's powerful races, who had once mocked humanity as weak, were now on the edge of collapse, their pride crushed by the relentless and ruthless efficiency of the human assault. But it wasn't just the overwhelming power of humanity's fleet that made them such a fearsome opponent. It was their ingenuity. Where other empires relied on brute force, humanity used its greatest strength, creativity. The human mind had always been adaptable, and it was this adaptability that gave humanity the edge. They didn't fight like the galaxy's other species. They fought smarter. They deployed tactics that were considered outdated, even primitive by galactic standards, but they proved devastating. Guerrilla warfare, hit-and-run tactics, ambushes, and even psychological operations were used to great effect. Humanity understood that war was as much about the mind as it was about firepower. Fear, confusion, and disarray were just as powerful as any weapon, and humanity was a master at manipulating them. Whole fleets found themselves paralyzed, unable to coordinate a response as humanity's psychological tactics broke their spirits. The more advanced species, who had grown accustomed to fighting in a certain way, were caught off guard. They were outmaneuvered, outthought, and outclassed. As the war raged on, the balance of power in the galaxy began to shift. Empires that had once looked down on humanity, dismissing them as a nuisance, now found themselves questioning everything. What had seemed like a series of isolated incidents was now unmistakably a coordinated, relentless campaign. With every victory, humanity's reputation grew. The mighty races that had once dismissed them as insignificant now began to see them as a real threat. There was no denying it. Humanity had changed the course of the war. The galaxy was no longer the same. Desperation began to set in among the galaxy's ruling empires. Alliances that once seemed unbreakable began to crack. Species that had sworn never to negotiate with humanity now found themselves reaching out, trying to broker peace. But General Kalen, the leader of humanity's Supernova fleet, had no interest in anything less than full equality. He would not settle for less. He made it clear to the galaxy's leaders, peace could only come on humanity's terms. The days of being seen as lesser, of being mocked and ignored, were over. Humanity had proven its strength, and now it was time to claim its place among the stars. With each new victory, humanity's resolve grew stronger. General Kalen was unwavering in his demand for respect. The war, once seen as a rebellion by a weaker species, had become a fight for recognition. Humanity wasn't fighting to conquer the galaxy. They were fighting to be seen as equals, to demand the respect they had long been denied. And with every battle won, humanity's confidence swelled. The galaxy had underestimated them for far too long, and now they were facing the consequences. It wasn't just a war for power, it was a war for humanity's identity, their place in the cosmos. Every new strike, every victory, sent a clear message to the galaxy's empires. Humanity was no longer the weak, naive species they once thought they were. The war had only just begun, and the galaxy had no idea how far humanity would go to claim their rightful place. The galaxy was on the brink of collapse. Entire star systems, once proud and powerful, had fallen under humanity's control. The galaxy's most influential empires, shaken and desperate, knew that if they didn't end the war soon, they would lose everything. The Supernova fleet had proven itself unstoppable. Its defenses were impenetrable, and no force in the galaxy seemed capable of even denting its might. As the war continued, the once mighty empires realized that they had only one choice left: destroy the Supernova fleet, or risk losing their place in the galaxy forever. In an act of desperation, the galaxy's largest and most powerful factions formed a coalition. They pooled their resources, determined to create a weapon that could stand up to humanity's devastating supernova cores. The plan was simple in its scope, but immense in its ambition. They sought to develop a weapon powerful enough to destabilize the core of a star, an explosion so massive that it could obliterate entire systems. If they could unleash this force, they could break the backbone of humanity's fleet and shift the balance of power back in their favor. The weapon was built in secret, in the depths of the galaxy's most protected laboratories. It was humanity's worst fear, an enemy weapon that could rival their own, capable of unleashing a destructive force capable of turning the tide of the war in an instant. The coalition's leaders believed that this weapon would be the answer, the key to ending humanity's campaign and reclaiming the galaxy for themselves. But they had underestimated humanity yet again. General Kalin had anticipated this move. Humanity had not only built the supernova fleet in secret, they had studied the galaxy's tactics, learned from their enemies' weaknesses, and always stayed one step ahead. They knew the galaxy would eventually try to create a weapon of such unimaginable power. What the coalition didn't realize was that humanity had already prepared a countermeasure, a weapon of their own that would turn their enemies' final gamble against them. The final confrontation was set. As the coalition launched their weapon, a massive, unstable core set to explode and destroy the heart of human-controlled systems, General Kalin made his move. Humanity's ships positioned themselves in a perfect, calculated formation. The coalition's weapon detonated with all the fury of a dying star, a wave of destructive energy that surged through space like a tidal wave, aimed directly at humanity's fleet. But what the coalition hadn't realized was that the supernova fleet was not just a series of warships, it was a carefully crafted strategy. Humanity had anticipated this move, and they had prepared for it. As the weapon detonated, General Kalin deployed humanity's ultimate countermeasure, using the very weapon the galaxy feared to their advantage. In a single, devastating instant, humanity unleashed their own destructive energy, harnessing the power of a supernova core in a calculated strike that absorbed and redirected the explosion of the coalition's weapon. The resulting explosion was massive, a fiery supernova of its own making. A force so powerful, it wiped out the coalition's weapon, decimated their forces, and sent shockwaves through the remaining factions. The remaining galaxy empires were left in stunned silence, watching as their final weapon had been turned against them. They had gambled everything on the hope that they could crush humanity, but in the end, it was humanity that had the last laugh. They had not only survived, they had thrived. They had revealed their strength, their will to survive, and their willingness to rise from the ashes of what was once considered weakness. The galaxy had underestimated them, laughed at them, and dismissed them as nothing more than a passing threat. But now, the supernova fleet stood as a testament to humanity's ingenuity and resolve. As the smoke cleared and the stars shimmered in the aftermath of the explosion, the remaining empires were left with one undeniable truth. Humanity had won, not just with firepower, but with their intelligence, their creativity, and their unyielding determination. The galaxy had laughed when humanity entered the stage. But now, the galaxy had nothing left to say. Humanity had the last word, and the galaxy would never forget it.